A tragic turn of events over the weekend in Muncie, Indiana. Some almost 20 people shot late on Saturday, early into Sunday, a deadly shooting. And we're going to be joined right now by the mayor of Muncie, Dan Ridenour. Thank you so much for joining us here on Live Now from Fox. I know it was a tough 48 hours for you. Can you just maybe give us the latest details on what we know during these tragic events there?
Well, yes, thank you, Andy, for this opportunity. Yeah, on Sunday morning, early Sunday morning, what ended up being roughly 1:15 a.m., there was a block party that was going on, and essentially what happened is we had a number of people shot as a result of that block party. One has lost his life, a 30-year-old male. And several others were taken to various hospitals with some various injuries. It's been quite tragic. I can't express how grief-stricken we are as a community, and we are as a mayor here. People are just enjoying a party, albeit in the middle of the evening. 1 a.m. I'm not quite sure how much good can happen at 1 a.m., but it's just very unfortunate, and we're trying to work our way through it.
Yeah, and you were very emotional during the press conference earlier. You said shaking to your core. Obviously, this is a tragic event for all these families. Maybe how much is it impacting you? How much is it impacting this community? What happened over this weekend?
Well, it certainly is having an impact on all of us, myself included. We're trying to figure out how do we help the citizens move forward? How do we help those families that are feeling loss? We've had one who's lost their life. I think most of the others are in good shape, and there's one critical. And how do we deal with that emotionally? How do we deal with that going forward? And so a couple of things that we've tried to do is we've set up a prayer vigil that'll be occurring at one of our local churches. We have a group called the Concerned Clergy, and it's a group of pastors that get together, and so we communicated with them, and we're having a prayer vigil tomorrow night to help with some of that grief. We've also communicated with a number of our mental health facilities to provide some services there, and we're also trying to put together a fund to help people get through this. So it's devastating, and I just can't express how disappointing it is that it ended up this way.
Yeah, and it was a large gathering overnight. Obviously, we do know potentially not a single gunman, not targeted. Maybe what led up to this? What was the kind of consequences of events that led up to this tragedy?
Quite frankly, we don't know, and we're still investigating that. We do know that there were somewhere between 500 and 1,000 people. We know that they were out. There were many who were out in the streets. It was difficult for police to get through vehicles. It was difficult for first responders to get through. And we're trying to figure out how do we help eliminate that in the future.
Yeah, and of course, Ball State right there in the heart of Muncie. Do we know maybe the demographic of this group? Because you said 500 people, and it could be kind of a variety of different people. Was it college students? Was it adults? Was it just teenagers in general?
Well, I think the overwhelming majority would have this particular group. It appears were probably the younger adults. We do know that 2 of the individuals involved that got injured were teenagers, but the rest were all in their 20s, 30s or so.
Yeah, and speaking,
and it was not Ball State.
Okay. Yeah,
it's about a mile, almost 2. It's probably two full miles from Ball State University.
Yeah, but also touching on that, because obviously it's not at Ball State, but school is going to be back in session very, very soon for Ball State, and a lot of kids coming down. Maybe what are you guys doing to maybe prevent future tragedy like this happening, especially with college kids that also, they enjoy the nightlife, they do certainly things like this. Maybe what are you guys doing to try to prevent something from future happening?
Well, we're looking at what we can do from a local level. As far as ordinances, right now, it goes till 10 o'clock. If you want to have a party beyond 10 o'clock, you have to get a variance through the Board of Works. Obviously, at 1 o'clock, we never allow a sanctioned party at 1 o'clock. So we're looking at how do we address that? And we can tighten that up. We can make no exceptions and keep it at 10. We're still working on that on the local level. I've also had communications with our local public safety teams and also with the governor's office and some state legislators on how do we get more teeth in some of the legislation so that we're able to do more arresting rather than just writing tickets. So that's a part of the problem as well that we're working on how to address. So we've created a task force, a multi-agency task force that is looking at some of the potential solutions to this.
Yeah, that is certainly what a lot of people maybe are hoping for, solutions to this to hopefully avoid something like this. Of course, you mentioned one fatality, but there are dozens or a dozen or more injuries. Have you spoken to any of those victims yet? Maybe what would you say if you haven't yet?
I have not been able to personally talk with any of the victims. I know that some have been released from the hospital now. So that is a possibility. We've talked with some of the family members of some of the victims, but I've not talked with any of the victims yet.
All right, certainly a very difficult story. Mayor Dan Ridenour, thank you so much for joining us. Any parting words, anything you want to leave with our audience before I let you go?
Yeah, Andy, I wish and hope that this never happens in any other community. And that's all, that's what I would have to say. We will continue to work and try and make our community safe, and I hope it never happens anywhere else.
All right, well, we appreciate you, obviously a very impactful moment there for you and the entire community, and certainly doing what's needed to avoid it in the future. Mayor Dan Ridenour, thank you again for joining us here on Live Now from Fox.
My pleasure.